Good evening and welcome to Business Now. Tonight, we are diving into Uganda's financial year 2025-2026 budget of 72.4 trillion shillings, a blueprint officially approved by Parliament in mid-May, maintaining roughly the same spending level as last year, while staying focused on key sectors like agro-industrialization, tourism and petroleum infrastructure. But first, let's have a quick look at some of the stories which are dominating headlines this week in the world of business. The World Bank funding resumes after a 2-year freeze. As of June 5th, the world lender has cleared new funding for Uganda again, unlocking projects in social protection, education and refugee support, critical for infrastructure and public services. President Museveni's June 5th speech unveiled Uganda's fourth National Development Plan, NDP4, setting socio-economic priorities ahead of the national budget and providing headline-making direction for fiscal and development policy. Around the world, the capital markets remain on the edge, fetching a federal court reinstatement of sweeping import tariffs in the US, triggering uncertainty in markets. And analysts will be watching closely for shifts in yields, equities, and global investment flows. We'll start off with the civil society voices, especially from the Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group. They have welcomed the move on the new public investment policy and noted the improved climate finance commitments. But they are urging government to step up support for local governments, strengthen parish-level financing, and limit domestic borrowing to ensure private sector-led growth. And analysts like Tini have also flagged a worrying 10.4 trillion gap between the National Development Plan for goals and this budget's projection.
Our concern is about the declining financing, specifically to the Ministry of Agriculture, with an estimated budget of 815 billion for the financial year 2025-2026 from 1.18 trillion in the current financial year. It is worth noting that the transfer, with the rationalization process, which of course happened recently, has had mergers of entities which were taken back to the ministry, mother ministry, like the Cotton Development Authority, the Dairy Development Authority, NADS, and the Uganda Coffee Development Authority. We thought that with this merger and the rationalization process, possibly the budget would have increased, but to our surprise, we know that the Coffee Development Authority under MAIF, including aspects of coffee value addition, standard accreditation, of course, post-service handling, name it, has been allocated to a tune of 81 billion. However, the decline in MAIF budget is most likely to present challenges of the sustainability of activities, especially under the new department, arising from the rationalized entities. You know very well that under the coffee sector, the European Declaration on the afforestation actually had pronounced itself that we should have registered all coffee farmers this year, but then we extended to next year, up to April. And the ministry is already grappling with the money to register coffee farmers. So first statistics indicate that they've not even reached 50% of the coffee farmers. The process is ongoing, but they're struggling with the financing. Recently, I was interacting with some of them. I think that some of the grants they've gotten from ABI and other are done. Now they're looking for more funding here and there. So it's a big issue that we may risk. And you know, EU imports over 70% of our coffee, and it's our biggest coffee kind of taker. So it's a big challenge that this man allocated possibly may sufficiently address this challenge of especially coffee farmer registration.
From shillings 5.468 trillion from the financial year 2023-2024 to Uganda shillings 5.973 trillion in the financial year 2024-2025. But despite this increase, the budget allocations to local governments, we observe, have stagnated to around 5 trillion shillings in the last 3 years, which is a point of concern. It's also concerning that the focal points of implementation where local individuals encounter service delivery are facing yet another reduction of 6.7%, which translates into 5.73 trillion shillings. We think this reduction is likely to affect service delivery in local governments. Now, as you may all know, that most of our local governments depend heavily on central government transfers. The local revenue that they collect in local governments is not sufficient enough to address service delivery gaps. Imagine if today it rained with a lot of storm and the storm took away a roof of a classroom block of a school. Very few local governments will be able to respond to this service delivery gap. So this sort of reduction in allocation, we believe, does not clearly demonstrate the potential of local governments, or does not demonstrate the potential of the implementation of the decentralization policy in this country.
Specifically to the GDP, we see that its contribution has risen from 4.7% in 2022 to about 5.5% in 2023. And this is about contributing about 10.6 trillion. And we know that the potential the sector holds is really huge. We see that the number of international tourism receipts we get from tourism have also increased to 3.8 trillion in 2023 from 2.5 trillion in 2022. We know that government has also made several initiatives. For example, construction of very many roads that connect to different tourist attractions. We see the government has made efforts in advertising the sector. Abroad, we've recently seen the Boate that has been concluded, and it has brought very many people to the country to see what we have to offer in that kind of sector. But despite this, we see that the budget for this tourism program only stands at 0.6% of the entire budget for 2025-2026. And this is just 427 billion, whereas it's an increase from the current financial year where we have 289 billion. We still feel like it's so little for us to achieve what we want to achieve from the sector.
Anti-malaria medicines has declined from 4.6 billion to has declined 4.6 billion from 4.75 billion. Uganda is one of the most common diseases in Uganda or in tropical Africa is malaria. But we are seeing the allocations to anti-malarials declining from 4.75 billion to 4.69 billion, which should be an issue of concern. Reproductive health supplies, their budget is going to decline from Uganda shillings 32.5 billion to 32.15 billion. And the funding for essential medical health supplies to national referral hospitals has declined to Uganda shillings 25.6 billion from Uganda shillings 25.9 billion. According to the Ministry of Health's National Integrated Quantification for struggles with funding gaps in the provision of essential medical supplies to the population of Uganda by about 478 million US dollars, and this is an increase of 32%. As our colleagues, with the challenges we are seeing in the health sector, when you check social media, we see cries of people that have either gone to health center 2, health center 3, and referral hospital, and they are not able to get medicines. But now in the next budget, at the background of donors cutting funding, we are seeing that the money going to essential medicine, especially malaria, is declining, which should be an issue of concern. We should be seeing government allocating more funds to fund healthcare, because that is a critical sector that affects every Ugandan. We are also seeing declining financing for Ministry of Education and Sports. As I said, I was going to speak about two areas, education and health. We know that the Minister of Education is the one that is in charge of education policy in Uganda, but also issues like education inspection. We appreciate the government's targeted allocation to some of the areas in the education sector, including the 244 billion allocated to towards Uganda Secondary School Expansion Project Phase 2, 12 billion for the development of primary schools project, 54 billion towards funded towards the funding of vocational project Phase 2, 7 billion for Uganda National Examinations Board infrastructure. We have also observed increased funding for special needs education under Ministry of Education and Sports from 2.5 billion to 4.7 billion. This is key because the funding for special needs education is key. When you got some districts that are disability prone, you find that the children that have disabilities are not going to school. So you are seeing an increase of funding going to special needs education, which is going to help those people that have disabilities to go back to school. However, we are concerned that the general allocation to the Ministry of Education is projected to decline from Uganda shillings from 900 by 9.8 billion from 853 billion in the current financial year to 843 billion in the next financial year.
In our second segment on Business Now, joining us first is the Chief Executive Director in acting capacity of the Ghana Media Center, who will share the government's narrative on how this budget seeks the full monetization of the economy through the economy, agriculture, digital transformation, industrialization, and expanded market access. We will also hear why this year's budget month launch puts transparency and citizen engagement from the front and center, including new public investment rules to ensure every shilling delivers growth and jobs. You belong to the Government Media Center. How has the rationalization of government agencies, merging some of them, been received? Do you see the strategy working going forward?
Yeah. The RAFIX process, I would say, is still ongoing because the agencies that were rationalized are still in transition as they are being absorbed by the mainstream ministries or some other mainstream agencies absorbing them. So the process is still ongoing. Of course, there were issues of job loss, which was not good, but something had to be done.
So we now have a budget of 70 trillion shillings for 2 years now. The same figure that came out last year, and we see key priorities already, stated. The ATMs for 2025-2026 budget. How will ordinary Ugandans benefit from those ATMs? I mean, if you talk about tourism, you talk about infrastructure and on all that, minerals, the extractives. What is the picture right now? What would you say Ugandans have benefited, or how will Uganda benefit from those priorities?
Once you have this side of economy, then you are able to finance social services. You are able to finance the different programs that run to improve people, the ordinary people, and shift them into the money economy. These programs like the Myoga, Yusraiko, PDM, and other, where man now is going to a common person. And you heard the president saying that now we are at people who are still in subsistence farming are reduced to 33%. Why? It's because the government has been able to push money into the lowest ladder of Ugandans to be able to now to farm or surplus and be able to sell. If you're talking tourism, of course, we're asking in tourism and the volumes of tourists, that's money into the economy. We're talking about roads. In fact, when I talk about roads, I think of marketing. I mean, it's a common person who grows his Irish potatoes in Kabare or Kisoro will be able to deliver his potatoes in Nakasero in a record 8 hours or less. Once you have roads, you have assured markets for the lowest for a person in Uganda. If you're talking about the extractive minerals, for example, including oil, hundreds of thousands already have been employed by even before we get the oil out. The welders, those who are providing services, food, technical work, those are hundreds of thousands of jobs that will be created between now and next year when the first oil will be getting up. And when we talk about science and innovation, we've seen these industrial hubs that have been created across the country. There are those industrial hubs for manufacturers and industries across the country, by the way. All those employ our people. Make no mistake. You go to Namunkekera in Rowero, to go to Mbare industrial hub. If you go to any part of Uganda where these industries have this set up, they're employing over 80 or if not 90% Ugandans.
So what should be done to make sure that all sectors of agriculture post good numbers and also come to close to coffee in generating the country foreign exchange cash?
I think the big thing, and of course still agree with the president when he insists that we must have every farmer must access money cheaply. In order to increase productivity, you must be able to put in some money, and that money should be accessed cheaply. Once you can access the cheap money from, say, commercial bank or these other banks of government that are extending loans to improve farmers' output, that would be a game changer. And the second thing is that to have a strong emphasis on extension farmers, presence of real extension farmers who are qualified. I don't know the ratio now per sub-county or per county, but it will be increased. So this ordinary farmer does not go into waste his energy and time on a crop that may dry up or just suffer some preventable diseases. And of course, who can stop that? Who can assist these illiterate farmers to do proper farming and to yield a proper yields that will change his or her life? There must be presence of extension farmers across the country.
Extension workers.
Guide our people that they don't make loss when they have even put in lots of energy and of course money.
How will it be possible for businesses that are already hurting right now to fork out a little over 37 trillion shillings without hurting them?
You know, what I picked from what he said, there is a lot of revenues to those who do not pay taxes at all. That's why he was insisting on going for stamp, e-freeze, digitalized receipting systems, where now these the smart guys who do not pay tax at all. So he's looking at curbing those. That they also brought on back into the tax
Tax bracket.
Tax bracket.
And that wraps up this edition of Business Now. A big thank you to our guests for tuning in as we unpacked the budget for the next financial year. If you would like to keep the conversation going, please follow me on X, formerly Twitter, at Malcolm Sime is my handle, and stay connected with NTV Uganda across all our social media platforms. Don't forget, we'll be back next Monday, 8:30, and the repeaters on Friday, same time, right here on NTV with more insights, analysis, and stories during business in Uganda and beyond. Until then, stay informed and stay sharp, and good night. But just before that, with Absa Bank's campaign called Joga, you can attain all your dreams. If you want to do business, borrow to buy a car, or borrow to pay school fees, there are salary loans of up to 200, 300, and 600 million in that package. Look out for your Absa Bank branch. And make sure you ask them about how you can achieve your dreams this year, 2025. Jogger with Absa Bank across the country.